So appendage is done, and we're first going to have a slight look at these to make sure that they're instances, and it turns out they're not instances. So what I'm going to do is align this one over here, then get rid of the old one by double clicking and removing it. And if you don't know this, you can check if they're instances by below your modifier stack. There's a little icon there, which I think should be a little white circle with two black arrows pointing it from two diagonal angles. And if this icon is not there and grayed out, that means it's not an instance. So I'm just quickly checking all of these. It turns out I've managed to break the instancing on them. It's sometimes a bit too easy to do this in Max. It happens when you, for example, convert something to an editable poly. It tends to lose the instancing, or when you add an instance modifier on top, such as the unwrap UV that we've been using all the time, and then collapse that one for all of them. Then you break the instancing. So again, I'm just going to double check that on all these parts, because obviously this has happened for a few parts now that I've completed most of the unwraps for the body parts. So again, just moving these around and aligning those to all the correct positions. And align that one to the right spot as well. I'm going to have to duplicate it again, and it's just easier to delete this part and grab the existing ones and just mirror them. I mean, no point in just manually moving them when they're just a mirrored version of the others. Okay, so there we go. And you might wonder why I haven't extended those long rods yet. We're going to do that later. So anyway, on to the front blade, the most important part. And I'd even go as far as to say that this might be one of the most important parts texture-wise of the bulldozer, because it really is going to require some good UV space and some decent texturing to make the thing pop. It's going to be so obvious, it's going to be so much in view that I have to make sure that this thing is unwrapped properly and gets the space it needs. So, to start it off with another flatten here, just to dump things around, make sure I have some flat faces here. And it looks like most of it has actually been flattened quite nicely. It's just these round parts here that are giving me a bit of trouble. I'm just going to select these, do an unfold on them, and move the unfold to the side. And do the same thing for this strip here. Another unfold. And see, it's doing all these weird rotates on them. And it's annoyingly also, again, split the vertices. So with that down, I'm just going to use the Align from Text Tools to align them. And it looks like I've tweaked them a little bit, so their size are a little bit off. I'm going to have to align those later, but first I'm going to do the top and bottom faces. Move that one over there. Do another planar one for this guy. Another planar. Place that one over there. And right, so then we're going to go to this part here at the top, which is also relatively important. You're probably going to see a bit of this. Just going to grab it and move it down there. Just rotate it. I want to place it on top of that one, but I'm going to have to make some space. So there we go. Make sure to place them together correctly. Now then for this strip, I'm just trying to rotate them or mirror them in a way that I can easily place them together. And then we've got the side part here, which obviously I'm going to have to rotate a bit so it sits in some sort of usable angle. Should turn off select by element. So there we go. It's not the angle that it actually uses in the model, but it is straight for the most part, which is important because, as I said before, your UVs are a grid and you want to try and stick that a little bit. This part's not so important because you won't see it that much, so I can rotate it a bit. It still needs a UV space though. Okay, then we have all these little tiny extra attachment parts at the back. I think we can fit them in over there. And there are just a few smaller bits left here. Not very important. They just sit on the inside and the bottom of the blade at the front, so we can just fit them in somewhere at the side. Okay, so that part over there. Just going to re-unfold that so they at least fit together. Very small, not very important. This part is also relatively important, not that much though. And that should be about it for the blade. Now, obviously, I do not want any mirroring whatsoever on the front of this thing. If you do any mirroring of the UVs there, it's going to look terrible. Like I said, pretty much the most important area in UV, so we could not get away with mirroring things for the front part, that is. The other parts, well, we probably can. It's just this really big area at the front that I feel should not be, shouldn't skimp and try to save on UV sizes inappropriately. Just mirror that part. For some parts I tend to re-unwrap them, but for this one it's going to be a bit of trouble, so I just pick one element, mirror it, and then stitch it to the other one. So that looks about right. I'm thinking this one, we're going to have to mirror that one as well. Reason for that being the ambient occlusion on that little purplish detail. If I don't do that, we're going to have problems. The bottom thing, I don't think that's so important. You're not going to see it so much, so I'm just going to leave that one as it is. So this whole big rack, big sort of fence protection thing at the top, lots of separate pieces. I think we can do a bit of sharing there. We'll see what we can come up with though. And a bit of an annoying thing to unwrap. Thank God that we have the this special unfold flatten tool from Max to do splines with, because this wasn't created as a spline, so I couldn't have generated UVs for it. Do a quick flatten. As you can see, ouch, that's quite a stack that we're going to have to work through. So we've got a big puzzle to solve here, so just going to move all of these out. It's just too much to start with almost. So I'm going to go over them one by one and just do an unfold. And there we go. A flatten would work as well, and then just manually stitch it, because I think an unfold's gonna mess things up a bit. An unfold might not really be my best friend here. So mirror that piece like that. And I'm not stitching these because I don't think I can get away with the smoothing groups being messed up by stitching these things. Also, it gives me slightly more to puzzle with, because these have very strange shapes to puzzle with. So as you can see, you've gone over a few already, slightly skipping ahead because it's not the most interesting part of the UVs. Here we are. Just doing a few unfolds. And right now I'm trying to tackle the ones that can share UV space. So just doing an unfold on them one by one. And it still tends to offset them slightly, so I'm just going to go over that and use the align tool. And with that done, I think a few of these parts need to be moved on top of each other like that. And then we're going to go over them again with these align tools. They all nicely sit in the same line. So that done, we've done quite some sharing here. That's a bit of UV space shared. The rest of them are all slightly different, so I don't think we can actually share UVs there. We could try, but I'd prefer not to do it. And this center one, we are, as you can see, also we slightly skipped ahead for that step. But at first I started unwrapping this thing symmetrically, but as with the front blade, I actually collapsed the symmetry, and I'm going to go over to unwrap the center part, which had a bit of an iffy UV because of the symmetry, and unwrap it uniquely. So then up this little thing here, nothing too complicated, just doing a flatten on that. I'm going to go over these pieces one by one. So this thing doesn't have to be split up for that to be a single piece. So I'm just going to do a quick unwrap, and that looks like something we can work with. And then this poly strip here should really be a single strip of polygons. And also I'd prefer to detach that part to make it easier to puzzle with. Just gonna move that there. Then select the bottom here. And place that one over there. Looks about right for that piece. Next up is this little thing here. I'm going to select that, unfold it, and move it to that position. Strips on the side, and of course, obviously, sometimes I tend to miss it, but when it splits the vertices, I have to weld them. You might be, I haven't really explained this why I always weld them. You might think, like, why is he doing that? Well, the reason for this is, when behind the scenes, this in the drivers, the graphics card, like the very low level stuff that you don't really touch as an artist, when UVs are split, it actually splits the mesh there, so it doubles the vertex count for such a thing. Like even though something has a single smoothing group, Still behind the scenes, it's going to have to pass more vertices, which means it's slightly heavier because the UVs are split there. It's just simply not possible in real-time graphics to have split UVs and not behind the scenes have split vertices there. So it's just a way of optimizing things and making sure you're not making a mesh overly heavy. Because I can guarantee you that there will be a difference if you have a mesh with a single smoothing group and you'd have one version with UVs with a minimal amount of seams and one with every single polygon in the UV split. The one with all the split polygons would definitely be heavier. So that's why it's something to avoid. Again, looks like we have a culprit there. I might get to that one later. Okay, so next piece here, I've done a few flattens, trying to stack this stuff on top of each other. Slightly rotate it. Can't use a planar here because it's at an angle, and planar tends to not really be happy to use local space. It tends to stick to world space. So I'll just use some manual lines here. I mean, not too difficult. So selecting these faces. Just gonna stitch some of this stuff. It's unnecessarily splitting things apart, which I don't really like. So put those together at that place. And then, yeah, we can work with these. Okay. I'll make this one slightly bigger. And then trying to line them like that so we don't have any distortion. And then just put them on top of each other. That's why I try to really make them fit. So if you're going to stack them, well, obviously you need to make sure that all the vertices are aligned. Depending on the resolution, it might not matter that much, but I just prefer to do it correctly. There's some more aligning to do for these pieces. Align. Same there. Yeah, let's see. I think there's some more parts where we can try and stack some stuff on top of each other. So this back area here, not super important. Those two parts, let's see what these are. Oh, that's the inside. Yeah, the inside of that area is not super important. So let's see. We're going to move it to the side. Let's see what I do with it. That down there. This thing. Yeah. Okay, there we go. That part's done. Then next up is this big sort of it's the tag link system. That's what they called it. Some sort of piston movement limitation part. And just trying to do a few more tweaks on this. And as you can see, I've already selected all these objects together at the same time. I mentioned this before, I think. Is if you select multiple objects and add a modifier on top of those, and then wrap modifier, you can see all of them at the same time in your modifier, but they still stay separate objects. And like I used to work with the 3ds Max version where this wasn't possible, so getting this feature is always felt like a nice thing to have for me. So doing some slight puzzling here, just moving these parts around so we have something that we could stack together with the rest later on. Trying to see where I can fit all this stuff. Move some of it up. And then this little part should be able to fit in there. I'm thinking we just stack these on top of each other. Won't really hurt to share the same UV space there. Looks about right. Move that one up to give it some breathing room. And okay, so we've already puzzled a few parts in there. But we've got the others to work with. There's not that many yet. We're not done yet, but I just, for the front blade, prefer to... Because the front blade, that really big area, is going to be the centerpiece of this sort of UV puzzle that I'm going to do. For now, I'm going to have two separate sort of UV stacks / layouts. It's going to be one for the body and one for the external parts like the blade mounts, the blade, the ripper at the back. And I'm just going to wrap them, keeping in mind that I might want to have two separate textures for them. We'll see how it pans out. And so I'm trying to stack these things with the most important piece being the central blade. Just like for the dozer body, the most important thing was the center of the cabin, which I pretty much tried to put in the center, making sure that it didn't get spread out too much, ensuring it it has adequate UV space. So just a few more of these pieces to move around. The puzzling is not very hard yet because, I mean, I've only worked with, I think this must be only about half of the stuff that I want to fit into this little UV sheet here. So it's not exactly challenging, but just at least trying to do a bit of a decent job already. We've got that last part there. And again, when you're puzzling these things, you shouldn't be afraid to move parts of your little sub-puzzles out. Okay, that's it for this part. I'm going to collapse that and select all these except for the splines there. And yeah, we'll select all the right ones and then just give it a different color. I'm thinking for this separate sheet, probably want to create a vastly different color, blue. Make it clear that it's a separate set of UVs for now. So that's it, on to the next part.